All right, we're continuing our study on leadership. This is our 12th of 17 lessons, so we have 5 that remain, so we're well underway or on the backside going downhill now as far as the number of lessons that we have to cover. Tonight we're going to be talking about why leaders do not lead, and so we're going to talk about several principles there. You may have some things in mind that you want to add to that, and we'll do that particularly toward the end of our study. Again, I remind you each time of our goal and our purpose is to develop leaders in the near and distant future, to prepare families for leaders that will come from those families and help all the rest of us understand the role of leadership. And hopefully you'll use this kind of material to look out among us, and as you look at some men who have potential but may not be ready yet, we'll ask for those names toward the first of the year and give you some more instructions along that line. All right, we're ready for number 12 here, which is why leaders don't lead. Next time we'll talk about communication, then we're going to move into qualifications of elders, and we'll go on from there. Now, in our recent elders meeting, it was suggested that we would like to hear, and we think the congregation would like to hear, more comments in this class from men who may, whether in the near future or distant future, make comments on particularly our scenarios, and because that gives some feedback of the kind of thinking that we're hearing and seeing among our young men, our men who may be older, who may be at the eldership age. We'd like to hear some feedback along that line. So think about that as you work on your scenarios and as we get to those, particularly toward the end of our study. Each time at the end of our study. So let's talk about why leaders don't lead. I want to suggest to you that in many realms, there will always be some in positions of leadership who don't actually lead. Now forget about the church for a moment. We'll come back to that. But we see that, for example, in the political arena. There are people who are elected to a position, maybe appointed to a position, and they don't actually lead. They really do nothing. But they're in a position of leadership. You see it in business. You see people who maybe acquire a business, maybe they inherit a business, and they don't really run the business. They don't manage the business. It just takes off on itself, if it takes off at all. Same thing in school or sports, and we see the same thing in the church as well. Now, what do we mean by not leading? Well, let's define that so we better understand what we're talking about. We're talking about cases where maybe decisions need to be made and yet they're not being made. I'm not talking about one occasion that you thought the decision should have already been made, but we're talking about generally speaking where decisions need to be made but they're not being made. Or maybe there's some problems that begin to multiply and they're not being addressed. So here's a problem, nothing is being done. Here's another problem, nothing is being done. Leaders then are not leading. When there are leaders who have little or no sense of direction or plans or vision, maybe in an eldership you may have several. Let's say you have 5 elders, and 3 of them may be those that have visions and plans and answers. But there may be 1 or 2 of those that don't have any visions. They're just kind of yes men. They're not leading. We're talking about when one, rather than take responsibility, this idea of the buck stops here, they blame others. When there's a problem, remember that statement Truman was known for saying, the buck stops here. You put the blame right here. I'm in leadership. The same should be true with elders. The buck stops here. Always blaming others for problems or for things not being done is not taking the lead. Or maybe a leader in name only. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, where he's not doing his job, but he's a leader in name only. And I'll give some examples of that here. For example, what if a person is a coach of a team, but he's not really coaching the team? Maybe one of the players is actually calling all the shots, coaching, and he's just out there standing on the sideline, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, but he's got the title of coach. Sometimes a song leader, we put somebody to lead before us, and sometimes they're not really a leader, they're a song starter, as R.J. Stevens used to say. There's a difference in song starters and song leaders. But he is in the position of a leader, though he's not really leading. The church is leading him. You've seen that happen sometimes. And the same thing with a teacher, sometimes teaching a class. Or maybe it's a teacher at school who doesn't really teach, They just have the title of a teacher. And really, they're being taught. Same thing could be true of a preacher. J.J. Turner suggests that he has seen this happen before, where some leader begins with a big bang and then they fizzle, the fire begins to fizzle in a short time. You appoint a new eldership and they take off with a bang, they're leading, making decisions, and then it quickly fizzles. That's the idea of not leading. They're not doing their job of leadership. So the question is, why? Why do we have problems along that line? Well, I want to suggest before we answer that in the Bible times there were leaders who failed. Just about any king you name in the Israel kingdom or the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom were leaders that didn't do their job. Now, there were some good leaders in the south, but none in the north. So all of the northern kings and many of the southern kings failed in their leadership. So just pick one and you've got an example. Let me give you another example. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 13. Remember, we often talk about 1 Kings 13 of the young prophet. He's never called a young prophet, but we call him a young prophet because there's another man there who is called the old prophet. And what I want you to see is concerning this old prophet, that there was this old prophet there, and I'm not going to take the time to read it, but you remember it, verse 11, there's an old prophet that dwelt there. And remember, the young prophet came along and dealt with the idolatry, cried out against the altar. Remember that? But there was an old prophet there. Now, this is not spelled out, but this is implied. If the old prophet has been around and seen all of this, and the young prophet is the one crying out against the altar, what's the old prophet been doing? He's been ignoring it. He ain't been doing nothing. He's not doing his job. He seems to be dilatory, perhaps an apostate. But the point is, here were prophets. He is an example of a prophet. Other prophets did much the same. There were false prophets who just didn't do their job. He's lax on his job. There was no indication, at least as we're introduced to him. Later, he's a false prophet because he says the Lord spoke to him when he didn't. But there's no indication he'd been prophesying falsely. He just hadn't been doing his job. I'll give you another example. Not so bad as these kings, but remember John Mark? What did John Mark do that disappointed Paul? He didn't finish the journey. He started out with them, and when he turned back, why did he turn back? We're not exactly told, but I do know this, Paul wasn't impressed with his turning back, was he? Because when they got ready to go again, he didn't think he was worthy to take. Later, his faith was restored in John Mark, but that's an example of a leader that quit. And so he's leading because he's out on this missionary journey, helping them preach and to teach, and he ended up quitting. So that does happen from time to time. So let's begin to list. I've got 10 things we want to list. Let's work through these. I'll get some feedback from you as we go along, but hopefully we'll have time at the end. So if you're thinking, I know of a reason why some leaders don't lead, then jot that down and we'll fill that in toward the end. So maybe this will be helpful to us. One of the reasons that leaders sometimes lead is they lack ability. How could a leader be lacking in ability? Okay, that's true. Let's illustrate that with a song leader. All of us are lacking, even our best song leaders are lacking something in ability, but that doesn't mean that that's why this guy over here is not leading. He's not leading because he may not have hardly any ability to lead a song. Could that be true? And so there are men who may be lacking in ability that, yeah, they're still in leadership and can lead, but there's still some things they could improve on. All of us could do that. But what I want to suggest to you is that there are times that men are appointed simply because everybody in the church likes him. I've known of that to happen. They appoint a man, well, is he really qualified? He may not be, but everybody in the church likes him. Or maybe because he has a good family, and so we assume he's a good leader because he has a good family. Well, that's part of it. I've known of churches to appoint men because this is the best we've got. Now, they're not real skilled in leadership, but this is the best we've got. And they appoint men on that basis. but they don't have leadership skills. They may be not qualified. They will be qualified. I mean, if they are qualified, they'll have leadership skills. Potential does not equal ability, nor does experience equal ability. Do you agree with that? There are some men who have potential, but that doesn't mean they have ability. They may have experience at dealing with things, but that doesn't mean he has ability. Not all are going to develop and work toward leadership, even those who should have and should have worked on that. Let me give you some examples of that. Let's start with the second one. I'll go back to the first one. 1 Timothy 3, the very qualification suggests not everybody's going to have those qualifications. Not everybody's going to work toward those qualifications. For example, apt to teach. To the degree that Titus 1 says that you're able to deal with the gainsayer. Not everybody's going to work toward that. Some men are going to say, I want that. I'm going to strive to be that. Others don't care, and they're not working toward that. So not everybody meets the qualification. Much the same with teachers, James 3 and in verse 1. Everybody shouldn't be a teacher because not everybody has developed teaching ability. Would you agree with that? You don't just put everybody in to teach, or anybody. All right? Same thing is true when it comes to leaders. Some are going to be more followers than they are leaders. There are men who are good men. They may be good men to take part in other parts of service. They may be good in their families, but they're better followers than they are leaders. Would you agree with that? They don't need to be in a leadership position. All right, let's go further. I want to suggest that ability means they're capable to step up and be one who could take the lead in, for example, the direction where the church needs to go. So when you're looking at someone, does he have the ability to lead? Can he step up and help and say, this is where the church needs to go. This is what the church needs to do. Could he step up to the plate and say, this is what needs to be done to correct the problems in the church? If he has ability, can he instruct and give some reasons why the church should go in a certain direction and give some defense of that? Can he can he come up with a plan to prevent problems from happening in the future? We don't want X to happen, and in order to keep that from happening, we need to do A, B, C. Can he do that? That's ability. Does that make sense? Some men are lacking in ability. So here's a question that's kind of a question to ponder. What if everything was left to you? Talk about in the church. How would it go? You say, well, it never would be left just to me because there's always a plurality. I got that. There's always a plurality of elders. But what if the direction of this church were left on your shoulders? That's a weighty task. How would things go? Would you know how to prevent problems? Would you know what to do? Would you have a sense of direction? Do you have visions, plans, answers, etc.? Does that make sense what we're asking? That's a thought-provoking question. Anything someone wants to add to that before we go to the next one?
I think you could have somebody that had all the technical qualifications, but not have the personal skills to interface with the rest of the congregation on anything. That'd be a great technical guy. Do all the teaching, do all the singing, leading songs, all of that, but couldn't solve the problem because he didn't know how to interface.
Yeah. He may know biblical answers, but he doesn't know how to relate to people. I've seen that. I got you. Good point. Good point. All right, let's list a second reason why some don't lead. They lack courage. It takes courage to stand against the forces of change. And I cite Acts 20. Some of these we're just going to hit quickly because of time. This is where Paul talked to the elders of the church at Ephesus. After my departure, men will come in speaking perverse things. You remember that? And draw away disciples after them. And he's warning these elders that's going to happen. You're going to have to deal with that. But it takes courage to stand against those winds of change. It takes courage to make a decision that you know is going to upset some people. And so it takes courage to be a leader. It takes some backbone to stand and to lead and not be swayed by the winds. That you think this is where we need to go, this is the wisest course, but then some are trying to persuade you and you say, well, if that's the way we need to go, and you're easily swayed, that's not much leadership, is there? So it takes some courage. Now, Jonah was a man of courage. What did Jonah say? You choose for yourself whom you will serve, but Yeah, we're going to serve the Lord. If I have to stand by myself, this is where I'm going to stand. Isn't that what he's saying? Here's another example of courage. Paul was an example of courage. Galatians 2. What was so courageous about Galatians 2, 11 to 21? I mean, that took some guts. He stood up to Peter when Peter was acting. This is another apostle, and he's telling him he's wrong in what he did. Speaking truth to power, as we say in politics. That took some courage. Some are not leading and making decisions simply because they don't have the courage to lead. They just don't have that courage to say, I'm going to stand against the crowd. I'm going to stand against the winds of change. I like what one writer said, if you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back to the crowd. Not a bad suggestion. And so it takes courage. Let's add another one or two, and then we'll start and see if you want to have some comments about one of these. Some are not leading because they're too busy. How could that be? All right. Maybe a lack of priorities. It's going to matter little about a man's ability, his skill, or his courage if he doesn't have time. Would you agree with that? Say, man, he's got ability. Oh, man, he's got ability running out of his ears. And, man, he's got courage, and he's got skill. But when you ask him to do something, he just doesn't have any time. That's not going to work. Not going to work at all. Often, listen to this carefully. Often, and tell me if you disagree. Often those who do the most, who already are busy, will take on more because they know how to manage their time. What's the old saying? If you want something done, or ask a busy person, is what I was after. And sometimes that is yourself. Yeah. If you want something done, ask a busy person, because the busy person knows how to manage their time, don't they? Person got nothing to do, doesn't know how to manage their time. Now, what does Ephesians 5 and 16 talk about our time? What does it tell us about our time? Redeem it. What does that mean? Make the most use of it. Use your time wisely. Leaders have to do the very same thing. So what would you think about a coach that doesn't have time for some of the practices? You get your kid out there, you've enrolled them in the sports field, and the coach is not there for half the practices and some of the games because he doesn't have time. You say, well, he's busy, he's got other things he's doing. Same thing with the teacher that's late for most of her classes. I'm not talking about Bible classes. That would be bad there, but maybe at your public school, your teacher's missing half the classes. You say, well, why? Well, she's got other things she's doing. She's very busy, or the store manager that's hardly there. There's some stuff that we have to do when we don't have the time. Does that make sense? Some of the most productive things I've done it when I didn't have the time to do it. There's other things crowding. There's other things pressuring. And if someone, well, why are you doing that now? Don't you have a, yeah, because if I don't do it when I don't have the time, it will never get done. All right. Let's go further. This is a big one here. Some leaders are not leading because they're not respected. Would you agree with this? You can't lead people who don't have confidence in you and don't respect you. Now, people are probably not going to come up, and that may happen sometime, but most of the time, people are not going to come up to a leader and say, I don't have any confidence in you and I don't have any respect for you. But if you knew that's the way they felt, do you think you can lead them? Not real well. So let's talk about some reasons why some are not respected. You start. Tell me, why would some leaders not be respected? Say again? All right. They think you're not qualified. True or not? There have been multiple elders. Somebody says, I don't think you're qualified. Whether it's true or not, just forget that for a moment. It's hard to lead those people who think you're not qualified. Would you agree? Very hard. Because so they don't respect him because they think they're not qualified. Here's another. He may rule with an iron fist. What does that mean? Does whatever he wants. This may be what Philip's talking about a moment ago. where he doesn't have the personality to deal with people. He's got knowledge, he's got insight, he's got answers, but he rules with an iron fist. He doesn't know how to relate to people. Sometimes a lack of communication, a gap between the leaders and the followers. I've been to places in meetings where brethren would say, the problem here is the elders don't let us know anything. We don't know what's going on. We're kind of kept in the dark. And it's hard for people to follow leaders who are not telling them anything. Does that make sense? So present elders, future elders, we all need to keep the followers informed. Would you agree? That's an important part of leadership. Or maybe they feel ignored and mistreated. If you feel like a leader is ignoring you, then you're not going to have respect for them. Or he may just merely be a yes man to others. I've known of some men who are yes men. What do we mean by that? We've commented on that before. They just go along with everybody else. They don't have any ideas of their own. They just say yes to an idea they think is good, and they can't lead. They're just really followers. I'm here to give my vote, and if you'll tell me which way we need to go. And so if you know a man is nothing but a yes man, you're not going to have any real respect. Or maybe he's easily swayed, that he has an idea, but somebody can talk him out of that real quick, and then somebody can talk him back the other way real quick. That's something that people have no respect for. Would you agree with this, that respect has to be earned? How?
By your actions.
All right.
If you want someone to respect you or something, be good at what they're looking for. Otherwise, you show that image of caring or whatever that they're looking for.
All right. That's good. Good point. Yes, sir.
Leading by example is one of the most favorable ways that I would look on you positively. Is you're doing what you're correcting other people they should be doing.
Good point.
Leading by example.
Good point, because that's what elders have to do. Would you agree that respect cannot be demanded or forced? You earn that. And how do you earn that? You earn that by character and by personality that's displayed. Basically, living the Christian life the way you're supposed to live will earn you some respect. Would you not agree? And so if you have no respect for a man that's a leader, it's probably not because he doesn't have leadership skills. It's probably because he doesn't have Christian characteristics about him, or some of them are missing somewhere. Most likely is the case. Some have simply done nothing to earn respect. And what I'm suggesting here is liking the man is not the same as true respect. You may like a man, and you say, I like him. I like his personality. Doesn't mean you deeply respect his leadership skills. And I put a quotation up here, and that's from a case where I knew of an elder that resigned in kind of a huff and having a little bit of outs with the other elders, and got up one night and made a spiel about what he thought was wrong, and then he departed and left. Well, one of the other elders had to get up and rebuke him and deal with that. And I asked the preacher, one of the preachers that was there, I said, did he take any followers with him? He said, no, because I knew the elder and I knew the church. And I said, well, why not? He made this statement. He said, because I think people were more amused at him than amazed at him. Now, if you're a leader that people are more amused at than amazed, meaning they like you, but they don't have deep respect, then it may be hard to lead them. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes some sense to us. Respect is not to be confused with liking all the decisions that are made. Does that mean you agree with every decision the elders make if you have deep respect? No. You may disagree with a decision. Say, I don't like what they did. It's a judgment call. I don't agree, but you can still respect them and yet disagree with the decisions they make. Let's get number 5. We'll be halfway through. Some leaders don't lead because they're indecisive. What does that refer to? Can't make up his mind on anything. See, decisions are a major part of leadership. You've got to decide what's right sometimes. Here's a question that's come up, and we've got to decide what does the Bible teach on that, and we've got to go in the right direction. Sometimes you've got to decide what is the wise or the wiser course. This is a decision that we've got to make. This is not wrong, but we think this over here is wiser. And so you got to make a decision. You've got to settle on a plan. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know churches that almost split over the color of a new carpet.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes. Churches during COVID split over a number of issues concerning policies that the elders may have had during that time. Places where I went for meetings were repeatedly splitting. A number of them did. I want to suggest to you that a person who can't make a decision is not easy to follow because they can't make up their mind or they can't explain why. When you go to one of the elders and you ask, well, why are we doing X, Y, Z? And he can't explain, as if he can't really make up his mind. He can't make a decision. He doesn't know which side he's on. He can't give an answer. Procrastination is a problem. I'm going to quickly go through that because we've dealt with that in part previously in one of our points. But this is where elders, or maybe one of the elders, is dragging his feet and they're putting decisions off and down the line a little bit. He's waiting for the perfect time to make a decision. And what I'm suggesting here is we need to learn to schedule some things instead of procrastinating. In other words, here's something that the elders need to see about. And if you're going to be an elder, you might have to say, I'm going to see about that next Monday and put it on your schedule for next Monday or next Friday or whatever. Does that make sense? Rather than sometime, because sometime never comes, does it? How many times have we I need to get around to that, and you never get around to that. Schedule what needs to be done. All right, let's talk about being satisfied with status quo. Be content with that. What is status quo, by the way? Same old thing, the way things are. There are leaders who are content with status quo. They let things stay the way they are. This is point B is probably more important than point A, in my mind, where there are leaders who let the church pretty much lead itself because they don't perceive that the church needs any direction. They don't think it needs any correction. So let's just kind of be the checkbook managers, and we'll tell them what time we're going to open the doors, what time we're going to close the doors, and pretty much let it run itself. And I've seen that from time to time. And so they assume, when they're satisfied with the status quo, that there's very little to do, and so they're not taking their work seriously. What would you say to an elder who basically, he may not say it in those words, but you get the impression his idea is there's really nothing to being an elder, being a leader. You just kind of open the doors and the church take care of itself. What would you tell them? Well, that's what you need to tell them. Good point. What would you remind him of? Yeah, there's more to it than that. What'd you say, Ricky? Same thing, watching out for souls. All right, here's another one. Let's get to this one here. Maybe we'll get to one of our scenarios here in a moment. There are men who can't lead without consulting home. What do we mean by that? There's some men who are under the thumb of their wives. And what we mean by that is they're not really the head of the home. Ephesians 5 said the husband is the head of the wife. Wife is to submit to the leadership of the husband. There are some husbands that are under the thumb of their wife, meaning that she's really the head of the home. That happens sometimes. And that may be because he really doesn't want to take responsibility. So it's not always her that's wanting to be the domineering person. There are husbands that I've known who kind of want to suppress that leadership role and push it off on her husband, on his wife rather. You take the role of leader, you take the responsibility, you make decisions, and I'll agree with that. We've all seen that kind of thing from time to time, maybe with friends or family or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's a domineering and manipulative wife who domineers over her. And so then if he serves as an elder, he always has to run things by her. Let me give you an example of that. Jezebel. What do we know about Jezebel and Ahab? Yeah. Yeah, chapter 21, 25. Now, I said chapter 16 to 22. That's the whole story of Ahab and Jezebel. But in chapter 21, verse 25, she stirred him up. He did evil in the sight of the Lord because Jezebel, his wife, stirred him up. But one of the ways she did that, she devised a plan and told him this is what you're going to do and how he could get Naboth's vineyard. Remember that? She was manipulative, and she was telling him the moves to make. Reminds me of my granddad was an elder over here at 4th Avenue in Franklin back in the 50s, 40s and 50s. And he resigned in 52 as they became institutional and more liberal. But I think there were 10 elders when he was serving as an elder. And there was one particular elder, when they would come to a decision, he would tell the story. They'd come to different decisions to make, that this one particular elder would say, well, let's just hold off on that. I need to go home and pray about it. And my granddad always thought going home and praying about it meant he went home and asked Mama, and Mama told him what to do. Because whatever he was leaning toward, he always seemed to change his mind when he came back. Well, sometimes leaders can be like that, and therefore they are not leading. What else would you say to a man that you think maybe has to consult home? Yeah, if he's not leading in the home, he can't lead in the church. So it's imperative to see how a man leads in the home if we're going to look at him for leading the church. So as we look out among us and we select men, we need to look at men and how's he leading in his home? And what we mean by that, does he really lead or does he just act like he's the leader? Is he the leader or is his children controlling him? I've known of some men, his children control him, meaning whatever they do, whatever they want, that's the direction he goes. And he may not then be a leader in his home. All right. Here's a case where they're not leading because he's always sticking his finger to the wind. What does that mean? Yeah. Let's see which way the wind's blowing, and that's why he sticks his finger to the wind. Let's see the way the wind's blowing. That's the direction we want to go because he seeks to do whatever the majority wants. There are leaders that fit that bill, and they want to know whatever the majority want. Would you agree that godly leaders sometimes have to go against the majority? All right. There are. For example, Noah, he was one of 8 souls out of the world's population. That's quite standing against the majority, isn't it? Just him and his family, that's it. Noah was an excellent leader. Micah, remember the prophet Micah? He had to stand against 400 other prophets, remember? Where he was told and encouraged, what you need to do is tell Jehoshaphat to do the same thing these other 400 prophets have told him. They said go to battle. And you need to tell him the same thing. And he said, no, I can't do that. I have to do what the word of the Lord says. So he's not sticking his finger to the wind at all. And then the majority is going to be lost. What would you say to a guy that you pretty much think he sticks his finger to the wind and then that's where he's going? Besides resign. Maybe tell him to have some courage, some backbone, stand up. Oh, no, this is not a popularity contest that he's, and he's probably not going to win it if he tried. All right, number 9, we've got 10, so let's get these next 2 and then we'll see what we can do to wrap this up. Some leaders are not leading because they have too much authority and too little responsibility. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, they like the position and the authority, but they don't like the work being done. I think I've known of people who like the position of being a preacher, but they don't like doing the work of a preacher. They like the position of being a deacon, but they don't like the work of being a deacon. They like the position, the authority of being an elder, but they don't want to do the work of an elder. Would you agree with that? That some would fit that bill? So he becomes merely a figurehead, that is a leader in name only. Now, what would you tell a guy who has that idea, the kind of work an elder needs to be doing? All right. He's to watch for souls. What else is he to do? Absolutely. They have the responsibility to oversee the entire church and all that goes on. They have the responsibility to feed. They're watching for souls. This is not merely a position of authority. This is not a title you wear. It's a job and a work to be doing. Make sense? Remember, Paul told Timothy, let's see if I've got my right verse. I believe it's verse 1. 1 Timothy 3:1, if any man desires to be a bishop, he desires a good work. Yeah, it's a work, it's a job, it's a task. Make sense? They have work to do. And so if you are, I don't think any man here would, but just as a warning, if there's any man that says, I want to someday be an elder, but you've got an idea, I want the authority, I want the power, I want the recognition, but I'm not really interested in the work, you're unfit for the job. Just being blunt. You're just unfit for the job. So we've got to have men that are ready to do the work. So you want to be a leader? Ask yourself, am I wanting the position or honor or power? Or am I wanting to do the work? Am I the kind of person that I would be willing to do the work without the honor and the position if need be? I'm going to watch for souls. I'm going to help people with their souls. I'm going to help teach. I'm going to help do whatever I can to save people and carry the church in the right direction, whether I'm ever in a position of leadership or not. But that's the person that is interested in the work. Number 10, some don't lead because of fear. They're afraid of their own shadow. What we mean by that, some are driven by fear. And so what are they afraid of? Some are afraid of what other people may think. So we make this decision. What are people going to think? What's the reaction going to be? Or maybe they're fearful of the consequence of a tough decision. We've got to make this tough decision. And what's the consequence? Are some people going to leave? Could we lose some members? And maybe could we lose some contributors? Could some people get upset with us over this decision? Maybe they're fearful of the cost. Will we have enough money? And so maybe we better not do that. Or maybe we're afraid of failure. What if this plan doesn't work? What if we try a radio program and what if it fizzles and it doesn't work? That'd be embarrassing. So maybe we shouldn't try. We're fearful of failure. Or maybe the kind of person who sees a problem, a potential problem around every corner. Everything we go to do, that's going to be a problem with it. You go to something else, there's a problem there. And so driven by fear rather than by desire to do the work. Now, does that mean we don't need to be cautious? No, we need to be cautious, very cautious. What happened to the one-talent man? He was called a wicked man, and he was said when he was asked that he went and hid his talent because I was afraid. I was afraid. Make sense? All right, here are 10 reasons we've listed why leaders don't lead. Many of those, about 6 of those I think I would attribute to J.J. Turner's work that you've heard about, his number of books on leadership, and the others I've put with that. Anything you want to add to that you say, here's another reason we can add why leaders don't lead? Good point. Very tempting to back away and dial it back, lest I go through the same thing. And yet we need to have the courage to do what's right, regardless of the consequence. You're right. Anything else?
Donnie, all of those points are something that takes a history. It can't be based on just one person did at one point in their life. And one of the things that happens sometimes is the person grows up within a congregation and people knew them when they were a child or knew them when they were younger and knew some of the mistakes that they made and the growth that they made. And it's hard for them to put them in a leadership position, or that person looks back on the mistakes and they don't see the growth that they've made, and therefore they're fearful of their past and are afraid to move forward.
Good point. Good point. All right, let's go to at least one of our scenarios and work through that. And if we do that, we'll still be one behind, probably. So let's see what we've got here. By typo or mistake, your handout would have said you're one of 3 elders. That had to do with the previous scenario. Has nothing to do with this one. So we strike it here. You could still be one of 3 elders if you want to pretend to be. Or one of 4 or one of 2, it doesn't matter. Still going to work the same. And there's a couple who has a child in Bible class program that comes to the elders and wants to move their child up to the next grade because they think he or she has advanced, is more advanced than the other children in that class, and the child is at a grade level that matches his or her age and school grade. How do you handle that? What would you do? You're one of the elders. Yes, sir. Okay. What evidence do we have that that's the case?
I think, I mean, this can cause multiple problems. Number one, that if you start letting this perhaps start, then other parents may want to do certain things. And then it's also, it's important for that child to be in the same age group as himself, where he won't feel, or she would feel different, I guess.
Okay. Good point. I want to come back to that. That's one of the things we're going to take away from this. We always have some point to learn from these. I want to come back. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Good point.
You also look at from a positive standpoint, that if he stays in there, he might benefit the other children and his abilities, he can
Challenge
learn
it.
from him as well,
Yeah.
or her.
Yeah. They challenge the other children.
You might want to consult the teacher too, who's actually got the hands-on time with the child, to get that input too, because she might actually see some things that could inform you.
Right. Good point. The teacher's going to have more input on that than perhaps the elders who are not in that class.
Spiritual age doesn't necessarily break down to chronological age, and where a person is in their spiritual walk may not be the same place that they would be pigeonholed into a classroom. Is one thing that I'm thinking. Another thing I'm thinking is we have to be careful realizing that some children may have other things going on. I know a situation where a person had learning disabilities, but was being kept back with children that were 3 years younger than they were, instead of moved with their class level because of learning disabilities. So there's lots of things that play into your decision.
All right. All right. Yes, sir.
Before any action is taken, I would also consider the possible impact on the other children, similar to what was already mentioned, but in a negative light. One of the worst things you can do to a child is tell them that another child is better than them. You can absolutely destroy a child with all the best intentions by treating them differently.
Good point. Good point. All right, let's wrap this up. I apologize that we got a little cramped on time, but let's learn some things here. What I'm hearing is we need to gather more information before we make a quick decision. Oh, yeah, just move your child up, or don't move your child up. We need to get more information. I think most everybody would agree with that. Is the problem with the material? I'd sit down with those parents and perhaps other parents. Is the problem with the material? If so, maybe we could change material. Is the problem with the teacher? And so what if the teacher made some changes, or in the next trimester, next quarter, we change teachers? Would that make a difference? get some more information from other parents. But watch about setting a precedent. If we set a precedent of, yeah, you move your child, then why can't every other parent move their child? And so basically we end up destroying the class system, meaning that we just say, we've got various classes, put your kid where you want. And so you've got a kid in the 5th grade, move them to the college age if you think they fit there. And then if you think your kindergarten child could handle the 2nd grade material, then take them to the 2nd grade. We destroy the class system, as well as maybe destroy some confidence in some others. So here's the lessons we learned that I wanted us to take from this. Number one, remember that decisions you make as a leader has consequences. So if you tell them, yeah, move the child up, you've just set a precedent for every other child, right or wrong. You say, well, I think I'd do that. Okay, the point's still the same. You just set a precedent for all other parents to do the very same thing. We got to be careful about making decisions. And then secondly is that we're taking away that we've got to gather information before we make decisions from the parents, from the teacher, from other parents. And then the third thing we take away is the complaints may be valid. They may not be. We've got to get some information before. And so we may need to make some changes in our class. We may need to make changes in material. So sometimes complaints are valid, sometimes they're not. But it's the precedent thing I was after with that scenario. We're going to stop.